guys, and welcome to my channel, The Messy Mama, where we discuss all things motherhood and family life here in Central Florida. Today we are going to be making some homemade sweet potato puree baby food for Amelia. So I wanted to show you guys how I do this. I'll be honest, making my own baby food was a little intimidating, but I knew that was something I wanted to do because I figure if I wasn't really comfortable taste testing jarred baby food to feed my baby, I would rather just go ahead and make it so I know exactly what ingredients are in it, and it's also fresh, and I can choose the produce that I buy to make her food with. So I figured it was worth the extra effort, and actually when I started researching it and messing around with different ingredients and recipes, it's very easy. So I want to encourage you as a new mom, if you have not tried making your own baby food, definitely give it a try. It is much easier than I thought it was going to be. So let's get started. Here's Amelia as my sous chef having a little teething biscuit. So here are the tools, I guess you would say, that you need to make homemade baby food. It doesn't have to be a magic bullet, that's just what I had on hand. You could use any sort of blender or food processor. We also have a Vitamix, and I use that for when I do larger batches of baby food. All you need is a pot with a lid. It would be also ideal to have a steaming basket, which I do have as well, but I didn't want to use that for the sweet potatoes. You need some sort of blender or food processor, which today I'm using the Magic Bullet, a cutting board, a knife for the sweet potatoes. I'm going to peel them, and then these are silicone molds. I just got these off of Amazon, and I highly recommend that you use something like this. You could also just use an ice cube tray, but I liked that these are flexible, and the volume measurement in here is like 1 to 1.5 ounces. Which is perfect for helping me to figure out how to portion out her food. And then also, just so you guys have some reference, I ordered these glass baby food jars. They have a little measuring thing on the side here and the lids. These are like microwave safe. You can also put them in the freezer or refrigerator if you need to. But it's the perfect size with this silicone mold for me to pop a frozen thing of baby food out of this and defrost it in the refrigerator in one of those baby food jars. So let's get started with peeling the potatoes. All right, so I have peeled the sweet potatoes and washed them off. Next, we are going to cut them up into small chunks so that we can then put them in this pot with a lid, add a tiny bit of water at the bottom, just enough to use it to create some steam, and we will steam the potatoes until they are soft with a fork, and then we will let them cool off so that we can use them in the Magic Bullet to blend up to the desired texture and consistency. I have cut the sweet potatoes into small chunks. There's not really a science to the size chunk you want. It's just if they're smaller, they're gonna cook faster and possibly be easier to blend. But if you have like a Vitamix, it doesn't really matter what size they are. They might just take a little bit longer to steam. So I'm gonna put the lid on these and let them steam until they are soft with a fork. You don't have to use fresh produce if maybe you're just in a time crunch or the produce that you want is not in season. Like I have right here a bag of organic frozen peas. I also wanted to mention, based on all of my own research and consulting a pediatrician and just books that I've read, that you don't want to add anything to the baby's food. So like if I'm making sweet potatoes, it's just steamed sweet potatoes that are then pureed. I don't want to add any fat or salt or sugar to her food. She just needs the nutrition from the food itself, and also just the taste of the food itself. Because right now she's 7 months old. Really eating is in part for some nutrition, but mostly her nutrition comes from breast milk. It's introducing her to healthy eating habits as well as new textures and tastes of food. Say hi, Amelia. All right, so the sweet potatoes are steaming. So we're gonna keep that lid on, and I'm gonna reduce the heat just a little bit, and they should be ready soon. Side note, does anyone else's baby like to gaze at themselves in a mirror? Because mine does. My sweet potatoes are still steaming. They are starting to get soft, but I did just check them and I think they need a little bit more time. I also noticed that the water was almost gone, so I did add a tiny bit more water in there to avoid the sweet potatoes from sticking to the pot and to continue steaming. All right, so the sweet potatoes are soft now, and so I'm going to turn the stove off and we are going to let these cool. It did take about 10 minutes of them steaming to get to the soft texture for us to be able to puree them. After the sweet potatoes have cooled for a few minutes so they're easier to handle, I scoop some and add it into the container for the blender or the magic bullet or whatever it is that you're using. You want to make sure that there's a little bit of liquid. I did not have any water left over from the steaming because I used such a little bit to start with. But if you have water, you do want to reserve that because some of the nutrients from the food that you're steaming could have like steeped out into that water, and then you can add it back in when you're blending. Because I don't have any of that water right now, I'm going to use some breast milk. You could also use baby formula to add some liquid to this so that it blends easier. If your food is having trouble to blend in your magic bullet or blender of any kind, just add a little bit more liquid because it may just be too sticky. This texture looks like the texture that I was going for. It's kind of like a souffle, sweet potato souffle texture and pureed. I did have to add more liquid to it to get it to blend well. I have found that sweet potatoes require a little bit more liquid because they're just so sticky, whereas other produce like broccoli, a green vegetable, or kale may not require as much liquid. Fruits often also don't need very much liquid to be added. So now we're gonna take the pureed sweet potatoes and spoon them out into the silicone baking dishes. Those are also freezer safe. You could also use like an ice cube tray or something like that. I just like the shape of these and the portion size for her baby food jars. So we're gonna go ahead and do that, and then we're going to place the silicone baking tray into the freezer and let them freeze until they're solid, and then we can transfer them for storage. One of these little trays here is between 1 and 1.5 ounces. So for something like sweet potatoes, I fill it up. For other things like kale, maybe I'll only do partially full or half full. Personally, I like to make her foods with ingredients separately. So like this is just sweet potatoes, and then I can take something else like apples or a vegetable and mix it together when it's time to serve it to her. That way I can have a lot of versatility with the combinations of foods that I feed her, rather than being stuck with whatever it is I made in this one meal prep session. As I'm spooning this out, I noticed that my texture is a little bit thicker than I normally make this. However, Amelia is starting to get ready or able to have more texture in her food. I just wanted to mention that if your texture turns out to be off from what you want, like it's too runny or too solid, you can adjust to that. So for example, with this, it might be, if I wanted to make it more liquidy, I could just add more breast milk or baby formula or even some water if I need to when I'm ready to feed it to her and it's thawed out, or I can do it now if I wanted to. The other option would be to mix it together with another food that has more liquid in it, like pureed apples, for example, to get that desired texture. And then if the puree is too liquidy, you can also correct that by mixing it with a little bit of cereal, like a baby oats cereal or a baby rice cereal, to make it a little more solid for your baby. Here we have the almost finished product of our sweet potatoes. So I've pureed everything and I've portioned it out into these little silicone trays. And now I'm going to put these in the freezer, and I think you need to freeze them for at least 4 hours. I usually just leave them in overnight and then take them out the next morning. And what I'll do is pop them out, and they come out very easily, and put them into a labeled and dated Ziploc bag or freezer bag to store in the freezer. And then I can just take them out and defrost them in the refrigerator the day or two before I want to feed it to Amelia. So it's super easy, super convenient. So those are gonna sit in the freezer overnight, and then I'll show you guys tomorrow morning how I take them out and I label them and organize them and get them prepared to feed Amelia. I did want to mention before we got off topic, I do have this. I ordered this off Amazon as well. It looks a lot bigger on the camera than it actually is, but it is a hand food mill. So for those of you who maybe don't have an electric blender or food processor of some kind, you can also use this, or you can take something like this with you when you are out at a restaurant or traveling. And it's just easy, really easy to use. You just put the food in the bottom of it, and then you push it up through this tube while twisting this little mill here, and then it comes up the top in like almost like a bowl for you to be able to serve to the baby. So that is also an option. All of these things that I ordered off of Amazon and have been happy with and using that I've shown you in this video, I am going to link those in the description below the video so that you can just check them out and see if it's something that you're also interested in using. So I'll see you guys in the morning. Hey guys, it's the next morning. Our sweet potatoes have been in the freezer overnight, so I'm going to show you guys the rest of my process for making our baby food and what I do to store it and then get it ready for her to eat. All you need to complete the baby food storage process is just some sort of container that is safe for food and safe for the freezer. So I am just going to use some Ziploc bags that are freezer bags and label them with a Sharpie. But you could also use like these baby food jars that I bought that also have like a measuring thing on them. They are safe for the microwave, they're safe for the dishwasher, they're safe for the freezer, but for the large quantity, I just transfer it to a storage bag. So I'm gonna pop these out of here, kind of like a little popsicle. They just come right out, and label the bags and stick them in the freezer. All right. So I have transferred the sweet potatoes into a freezer safe bag, and I've labeled it what it is, as well as, for me, I like to label it with the use by date rather than the date I made it. That way when I'm pulling them out and I have a hungry baby or I'm sleep deprived or something, I don't have to count days. I just know I have to use them by that date. These, based on what I've read, can stay in the freezer for up to 3 months. However, I have found that even with a large quantity like this, it only lasts a few weeks. So that's not really something that I've had to worry about. When I'm ready to get the food out for my baby to eat, I do that 1 to 3 days in advance and then just let it thaw out in the refrigerator. And I put one of the frozen popsicles, I guess for lack of a better term, into one of her baby food jars. And then I use this like wet erase marker to label it. And I also put the date on there so that I know I have to use it by a certain, 1 to 3 days after taking it out of the freezer. I have labeled my jars with what they are and the date so that when they thaw in the refrigerator, they do well thawing overnight. Of course, you can always heat it up in the microwave if you need to defrost it faster. Just make sure you don't make it too hot for the baby. I usually heat it up about 15 seconds and then stir it up and check the temperature. Here's an example of some food that I've already set out in the refrigerator. So I have broccoli, peas, apples, and green beans and sweet potatoes, and I just choose from my freezer what I want to use, and then I can make the combinations that I want with it. So like today she might have peas and carrots, but then tomorrow she might have broccoli and sweet potatoes, and then the next day broccoli and carrots. That way I'm not locked into having prepped the food already pre-mixed. I can portion it out for her and do all different kinds of combinations. Sorry for the jumping around. I just got the baby in bed, so I wanted to relocate to a place where I could talk and not disturb her for a nap. So I wanted to recap everything from this video and just kind of summarize it in case I missed something. First, making baby food at home is so much easier than I expected. So if you're intimidated or you're just exploring the option, definitely try it. And see if it's something that you like for yourself and your family and your baby. Another good thing about it is you know exactly what's in the baby food. The other thing is that it saves me money. One jar of, like, if you want to do organic, one jar of organic baby food can cost like $1.50, you know, on average. So and that gives you, the jars I have, it's 4 ounces of like sweet potatoes, but the cost savings is pretty big because I can just buy produce and foods that we're already going to be cooking and eating here at home, and then just cook the extra for her separately, or steam it and then freeze it. So like I have 3 medium-ish sized potatoes, and after I made all of her food, it made 22 1.5 ounce portions that I can then mix with other things, and they'll keep in the freezer again for up to 3 months based on what I've read. So you know, that's pretty good. Currently I'm staying at home with her, and I completely understand that that gives me a little bit more time to do this, and that it might be harder if I was working full-time. But I will say, if you've ever experimented with meal prep on the weekends, that would be a great time to implement something like this. It took me about, I would estimate like 30 minutes to do this, and then, you know, put it in the freezer and come back and do more, a few more minutes of packaging it up and labeling it. But that's about it. Don't be intimidated by needing a whole bunch of fancy equipment to do this. Comment down below if about your journey with this, or any questions that you may have with making your baby's food, and then also any great tips or tricks that you've learned along the way. I'd love to hear those. And I've also linked the items that I showed you in this video down below, just for you to check out and see if it's something that you're interested in. All of the items I showed you I've been very happy with and use all the time when I'm making her food. And so last thing is, make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel if you want to see more about motherhood and family life here in Central Florida. And until next time, make sure that you let yourself embrace the mess, and I'll see you guys soon.